Most mornings in my neighborhood look like they were printed straight out of a suburban brochure. Neatly trimmed lawns, beige siding that somehow manages to reflect judgment, and joggers who wave like they're auditioning for a medication commercial. I liked it that way, predictable, quiet. My backyard was my refuge, the one spot untouched by the HOA obsession with sameness. I had two towering pines, old, regal things that swayed like they remembered stories from before our neighborhood even existed. They stood on a small slope behind my fence, rooted in soil nobody ever thought much about. To me, they were shade, serenity, and the only real contrast to all the beige conformity around me. I spent most evenings out there in my hammock, listening to the wind in the needles and pretending I couldn't hear Brenda, our HOA president, lecturing some poor soul about a non-regulation mailbox. Brenda had the energy of a headmistress who'd lost tenure and taken it out on the world. Her hobby was control, her art form was fines, her weakness was people enjoying things she didn't supervise. For months, she'd eyed my trees, not said anything, just eyed them, like she was trying to figure out how they violated a rule that didn't exist yet. She hated anything tall, unpermitted, or older than she was, which was unfortunate for the trees. Everything was calm until the Thursday I came home and saw orange tape fluttering in the breeze like warning flags before a disaster. My fence gate was wide open, and muddy boot prints tracked straight into my backyard, the kind of prints belonging to people who don't apologize. My hammock was shoved aside, sawdust floated in the air. And where my two pines once stood, there were raw, jagged stumps. The moment felt unreal, like stepping into someone else's nightmare. But the anger was very real, because on top of one stump sat Brenda's clipboard, neatly placed like a calling card. And right then I knew that clipboard didn't just contain paper, it contained war. I picked up Brenda's clipboard the way you pick up a venomous snake, carefully, annoyed, and already imagining the headline, "Local man cited for excessive rage after reading HOA nonsense." The top page was an official vegetation compliance notice, which sounded impressive until you read the fine print. According to Brenda, my pines were encroaching on community sightlines, presenting an elevation hazard, and, my personal favorite, casting unregulated shade. I didn't know light required permits now, but apparently Brenda did. I marched straight toward her house, which was easy to find because it glistened like a shrine to micromanagement. Every flower was the same height. Every brick was aligned like soldiers on inspection day. She was outside, of course, trimming a shrub that already looked like it had been shaped with laser-guided scissors. She saw me coming and straightened, wearing the expression of someone preparing to scold a toddler. Afternoon, she chirped as if she hadn't just committed botanical homicide. "You cut down my trees," I said, holding the clipboard out. She clasped her hands behind her back. Actually, the HOA authorized the removal. They were in violation. Violation of what? I asked. She smiled the way cats do before nudging a glass off a table. Community aesthetic standards, and technically, those trees were on our greenbelt easement, so you're welcome. I blinked. Your easement, Brenda, that land isn't even on your map. She shrugged. Then your map is old. A couple of neighbors peeked over their fences, sensing drama. Brenda loved an audience. She stepped closer, lowering her voice but not her ego. "Look, dear," she said, "your backyard was starting to look wild, and we simply cannot have unapproved forestry projects. I suggest you plant something shorter, something obedient. Humiliation is a strange feeling. It burns hot and cold at the same time." There I was, grown adult, taxpayer, tree lover, being lectured like a kid who colored outside the lines. I walked back home with her words echoing behind me, something shorter, something obedient, but the thing about humiliation. It has a half-life, and mine was already starting to turn radioactive. The real fallout hit 3 days later when I was summoned, yes, summoned, to the HOA board meeting. The letter was slipped under my door like a passive-aggressive ransom note. Attendance mandatory, discussion, unauthorized vegetation activity. Brenda even highlighted the word unauthorized, just in case I'd forgotten she had superiority issues. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a building that smelled like old coffee and new rules. 5 board members sat behind a folding table, each with a binder thick enough to stun a medium-sized animal. Brenda was in the center, wearing a blazer the exact shade of tyranny. I took a chair in front of them, feeling like I'd been called to defend myself before a suburban tribunal. Brenda opened with a rehearsed sigh. "We're here to address Mr. Lane's ongoing disregard for HOA property boundaries." She said it slowly, savoring each syllable. "The trees he illegally maintained were removed at HOA expense, and we will now discuss reimbursement. Reimbursement. For them cutting down my trees." The room spun for a moment, or maybe that was just my blood pressure staging a protest. "You mean to tell me," I said carefully, "that you want me to pay for removing trees I didn't authorize you to touch?" Her smile tightened. "We followed protocol. You were unresponsive to prior notices. That's because you never sent any." She flipped to a tab in her binder labeled something like "Destroying Spirits," and held up photocopies of letters I had never seen in my life. Wrong dates, wrong formatting, one even used a font from Windows 98. They'd clearly been manufactured last night around Brenda's kitchen island with a bottle of determination and a broken moral compass. The board nodded solemnly, like they were witnessing my confession. One member whispered, "This is serious," as if I'd committed arboricide instead of being the actual victim. And then came the gut punch, a vote to fine me for willful obstruction of community maintenance. The motion passed unanimously. Even Gary, the one who still waved at me during trash day, betrayed me with a sheepish nod. I walked out defeated, carrying a folder of fines and a dignity that had been run over twice. But beneath the embarrassment, something sharper flickered awake, because on my way home, I noticed something everyone else had missed: the small metal survey marker behind the stumps, half buried but unmistakable. A federal property boundary tag, and just like that, defeat began to melt. Revenge had entered the chat. I knelt beside the metal survey marker, brushing dirt away until the embossed letters glinted in the late afternoon sun. U.S. Department of the Interior Boundary Monument, Do Not Disturb. I'd seen one before on a hiking trip, but never expected to find one behind my own fence. Suddenly everything clicked. The steep slope, the unclaimed patch of woods, the reason no neighbor ever used it. That land wasn't HOA Greenbelt at all. It was federally protected buffer property, which meant my trees hadn't just been cut. They'd been cut on federal land. Brenda hadn't violated an HOA bylaw. She'd violated the U.S. code. A warm, quiet satisfaction settled in my chest. The kind you get when you realize the universe has unexpectedly handed you a loaded legal slingshot. That night, I read everything: property plats, easement records, the HOA charter, which was mostly Brenda's personal fan fiction of authority, and the relevant federal statute. It was all there: unauthorized alteration of federally maintained vegetation, penalties for removal, required permits that Brenda didn't even know existed. I didn't need vengeance. I needed paperwork. The next morning, I filed a formal incident report with the local Bureau of Land Management field office. I included photos, timestamps, and screenshots of Brenda's proud "We handled it" message from the neighborhood app. It was the legal equivalent of GIF, trapping her confession in a bow. The response was swift. 2 BLM agents arrived the following week. Beige suburbia had never seen so many government windbreakers in one place. Neighbors peeked from windows, dogs stopped mid bark, and Brenda, oh Brenda, walked out of her front door smiling, assuming they were there to praise her. They were not. I watched from my driveway as her face shifted through all 5 stages of bureaucratic grief, while the agents explained federal boundary protections and potential fines for unauthorized land modification. She kept pointing at me. They kept pointing at the marker. It was beautiful. In the end, the HOA had to reimburse the feds for restoration. My fines evaporated. The board issued an apology for any inconvenience experienced, and Brenda resigned to focus on personal wellness, which I'm told now includes deep breathing and avoiding pine trees entirely. Harmony returned, quiet, real harmony, not the HOA approved version. Maybe order is overrated, maybe justice has roots. And yeah, the HOA never bothered me again. If you enjoyed watching justice grow taller than any HOA rulebook, hit that subscribe button. More stories, more karma, more chaos coming straight to your screen.